trying to get out his ID.
He spent his whole life serving this country.
Evil. Tragedy.
And I'm tired of this.
Told him not to reach for him! Hands up!
Let's keep praying until change comes.
We have got to do a better job of showing our communities that we are human.
The conversation is key.
One group is hurting, then everyone should be hurting, and it should be a group effort to change something.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sherry Jackson with my co-host this evening, Art Franklin and Jim Dunaway. Tonight, we have invited a distinguished list of city leaders, lawmakers, educators, police, and activists who, like many of you at home, are frustrated by an increase in violence, eroding race relations, and a constant fear that seemingly has gripped our nation.
And now here's our goal. We want to have a frank and open discussion about the serious issues of race relations and the perceptions of police and how they interact with our communities, but also the struggles of those officers who come face to face with danger every day and have to make split-second decisions to keep all of us safe.
And you're so important tonight. We want to remind you we are streaming this conversation on Facebook Live. If you have any questions for members of our panel, you can submit them on Facebook Live or report it at WIAT.com. We'll try and answer as many as we can during this special report.
You're an important part of the dialogue, this dialogue which has come with the shedding of blood and many tears for citizens and police officers alike. So as we go forward with this community conversation, we think it is important to take a look back.
The unarmed 18-year-old was shot by a white police officer.
After hours of negotiation, he was killed by a robot-delivered police bomb.
With demonstrators still shouting at the officers, police ordered the crowd to disperse.
A neighbor recorded sound of the massive shootout.
After two black men were shot to death by police officers in Minnesota and Louisiana this week.
For every action, our police employees failed to get him medical attention in a timely manner multiple times.
There is a reaction.
Hey, hey!
That reaction is not always when you think. It's not always what you think.
I just saw cops bending over, man. Like, it had to have been like 5 or 6 cops, I think, was all getting shot down.
And it's not always where you think.
I wanted the people to determine who was right and who was wrong.
A wake-up call to police across the country that this can bubble up anywhere.
Actions in Ferguson, Baltimore, New York, Charleston, St. Paul, Dallas, and Baton Rouge have sparked protests across the country and here in Birmingham. The reaction? A movement born out of the shooting deaths of African Americans at the hands of police.
There's nothing new here that wasn't experienced in the civil rights. The difference is we're dealing with a new generation.
And the ambush deaths of police at the hands of cold-blooded killers. Not just these incidents, but mass shootings based on hate in Florida and South Carolina.
Shot after shot after shot, it felt like it never ended.
What happened there could have happened in any city in America.
It's all been enough to bring many in this nation to their knees in prayer. And for most, it raises the question of how can we heal a great divide in these United States?
And it is why we are having this community conversation. Joining us tonight are Birmingham Mayor William Bell. Thank you for being here. Police Chief A.C. Roper, U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, and the Special Agent in charge of Birmingham's FBI Division, Roger Stanton, as well as Kara McClure, who is with the Black Lives Matter movement and activist here.
That's right, Sherry. Also with us tonight, retired Birmingham Police Lieutenant Leanne Self. State Representative John Rogers is with us as well. Pastor Danita Ryan with Soldiers of the Cross. From the Worship Center, Pastor Van Moody is with us, and the President and CEO of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, Andrea Taylor.
And also tonight, Jefferson County District Attorney Bill Veach is here with us tonight. Carlos Charverst Jr. is here with the National Action Network Youth Movement. Sergeant Heath Boackle, President of the Birmingham Fraternal Order of Police, with us tonight, as is Officer Dexter Cunningham of the Birmingham Police Department. Thank all of you for being with us here tonight.
You can see that is a distinguished panel that has joined us here in the studio. And Mayor, we want to begin with you as the Chief Executive of our city. How do we have that tough conversation and honestly address the issues that have been plaguing the community? And one of those is that there has been a long history of distrust in some people in the black community and police. How do we begin?
Well, you know, because of Birmingham's historical significance in terms of the civil rights movement, that distrust has always been there. But we acknowledge it, we recognize it, but then we try to do things administratively and professional training-wise to get our officers to become more sensitive to the human rights needs of all individuals. But by the same token, we try to set up programs within the community itself to bond the community with our police department, because we can't have chaos in the streets. We have to have order, but it has to be all of our responsibility, not just the police officers, but people who live in the community as well. And therefore, we design programs such as our COPS program that help to get citizens to understand what police officers face on a day-to-day basis.
And we're going to move toward those solutions as we talk throughout this hour. And I saw Chief Roper nodding his head when I talked about that underlying issue that has been there for a long time. Can you speak to that, Chief?
Well, we recognize that we can't be successful without good community policing relations. So it's not something that we just started working on last week or last year. It's been a foundational piece of our police administration for many, many years because of the history, as the mayor referred to. So you can't have good relationships without trust, and you can't have trust without good communication.
We ask people in our community, what do you think needs to happen to move us from this place where we are right now as a nation? And most of the people said there needs to be dialogue, there needs to be conversation. But the conversation about race is a difficult one to have, especially with people who don't look like you. So from your jobs, as you try to have those conversations with people or let them know that it's okay to talk about race, how do you train to do that? And let me just move this way and ask you, Mr. Stanton, from an FBI standpoint, because when things go awry, the FBI comes in and investigates when things are going wrong in these police departments.
So every single investigation that the FBI is involved in, the foundation, that bedrock foundation for all our investigations are protecting civil rights. And that's really what drives the basis for all investigations, is to make sure we're protecting civil rights. To do that, we in the FBI, like all law enforcement agencies, we have to make sure that we're transparent with the way we engage our duties to protect and serve the citizens. And we also need to make sure that we do what we can to make sure that our ranks as well are diverse. In the FBI, quite frankly, we're having some problems right now to increase our diversity ranks. So we're focusing on recruiting, seeking out, finding ways to get minorities into the ranks so that the people that we serve, that we are more like the community that we serve.
Kara, is that something that for Black Lives Matter, is this something that you want to happen? You want to be engaged in a part of solutions, but also a part of these departments? That's a question.
Absolutely. And our call to action goes beyond just addressing that and police brutality. If we're going to have an honest conversation about violence, poverty is violence. We want to talk about homelessness. We want to work on and have an honest conversation about gentrification and economic inequality. So the conversation has to be deep. It has to go beyond this. And we have to meet with our pastors, our activists. This is a community conversation, but only 2 people are from community organizing on the panel.
Well, actually, you're a community organizer. Carlos is up there. We also have 2 faith leaders here. Pastor Van Moody, if you would take that up and talk to us as you speak to your congregants, coming to you, some of them probably frustrated because of their own experiences. How do you deal with that, and what are they saying?
Well, there's a lot of fear that's at the root of all of these issues, and it's not just fear that's one-dimensional, it's fear on all sides of the issue. And so one of the things that we understood and we continue to communicate to our church is that we have a responsibility to engage the community for change, which is really the foundation of all of the programming that we do beyond Sunday morning. How can we continue to be part of the solution and not part of the problem? But then also to be intentional about making sure that we represent Christ in day-to-day behavior, that a real faith walk is not just a Sunday morning experience, it's how you live your life. Because what we've learned through history, and Christ was the ultimate example of that, is that hate never wins. You know, love is the strongest force to address any issue. And we need that. Not only did we need it in the civil rights movement, but we need it absolutely now. And so the conversation is a part of it, but then when we get up from the table, how do we truly live out our faith so that we can help others and help bring about positive change and not contributing to really a problem that continues to grow when we bring nothing but hate and disrespect to the table.
So Andrea Taylor with the Civil Rights Institute, you guys just had faith leaders there this weekend talking about this very thing, the conversation that needs to happen in the community. The Institute's a safe place to have different discussions, but particularly the discussions about race.
Absolutely, and the Civil Rights Institute is really a place that understands the history. We're stewards of the history, and we know what the negative consequences can be when communication and fear break down. And we have come a long way in Birmingham since the Civil Rights Movement. We've learned important lessons, and one of those lessons is that there has to be communication. People have to know one another, they have to understand one another, have a civil dialogue about how they can move forward. And so we've been having a series of such meetings, including the recent conversation led by Reverend James Forbes, the pastor emeritus of the Riverside Church. We had a rally a couple of weeks ago called Birmingham Love and Justice. We know that this is the Magic City, but we also think that it's a city that can promote love and justice and take a lesson that we've learned all too painfully over the last several decades about revolution and moving toward reconciliation.
Go ahead.
Talk is cheap. There's distrust on both sides. And anytime you got an officer does this, then walks away with a slap on the hand, saying he was frightened, you could continue to have this. We can talk all day about this, and community forums, all that stuff, but talk is cheap. Got to be some action. Every time a police officer does something, he walks. But he said he was afraid. He acted out of fear. So we know it's fear out there. So it's fear on both sides. So I'm telling you right now, talk is cheap. Proof is in the pudding. We got to do something active to make sure it works. We can talk all day. We can have it all day.
Well, State Representative John Rogers, let me switch over to Dexter. He's back there. He's back there. He's on the front lines, on the streets every day as an officer who is also an African-American officer out there. What are you dealing with? What are you facing, and what are your thoughts?
I think the challenges that I, as an African-American, have to deal with are much more intense and deep and difficult than anyone who is non-black can never really hope to understand. When I first I've been in law enforcement over 25 years. When I first got into law enforcement, we had the Rodney King fiasco. And when I was on the streets, I would have people, please don't beat us like Rodney King. And I would say, sir, that's in California. And I care a lot more about you. And I will not disrespect my mother and father's name by doing anything that's dishonorable. I have worked some of the most dangerous areas in the city. I worked in Gate City on the 11 to 7 shift when they were dropping bodies constantly, and I walked it because I had relationships with people in the community that I trusted, that I could look them in the eye and they could look me in the eye, and they knew that my word was bond, and I always kept that word. And I think we as police officers, there are oftentimes I work with individuals who are scared, who have not worked or lived in the inner city, and they think that a African-American male with his pants sagging and with dreadlocks, he is something to be afraid of. And I can tell you firsthand, he bought me my breakfast the other day, and it almost brought me to tears. And I said, sir, you don't have to do that. He said, officer, I know you didn't think that I was going to do this for you. I said, well, you would be surprised. And we had a conversation. And I think that is what needs to take place. But it happens on the grassroots levels. No disrespect to the mayor or the chief or to Mr. Rogers, because you can come up with all the policy that you want to come up with until you have dedicated individuals who are passionate about their communities, who want to affect that change, who can look at a Black Lives Matter activist and say, I understand and I respect your point, but please understand I have a wife and family that I want to go home to too. If you don't disrespect me, I will not disrespect you. I want to see you live. I want to see you pay taxes and be fruitful. But I have a duty and obligation to come home to my wife as well.
Thank you for that. Coming up, we're going to talk about how and when we are most likely to come into contact with police, and we're going to get some reaction to the arrest of Texas teacher Breon King and discuss the conversation she had with an officer while she was handcuffed inside a patrol car.
And as we head to break tonight, listen to one of the many comments we received when we asked people in our area to describe their community relationship with police.
I would say in my neighborhood, it's a good relationship.
We have trust and respect for our law enforcement. I believe it goes both ways. I feel safe in my neighborhood. I don't know that that's the case citywide, and that makes me sad.